Okay, I think I'm live. All right, yep, perfect. So, welcome everyone. Today we are going to be discussing Tokyo Vice Season 2, Episode 8, titled The Noble Path. Now, this episode was pretty crazy. We finally got the flash, or not the flashback, but we finally saw the scene that opened up the entire show. Like basically, the original pilot had the opening scene, and we're going back to season one, episode one. The original pilot had a scene of Jake and what's it called? Jake and kind of Geary together, and they were coming to talk to Yabuki, which is Tozawa's number two. So that's what the show initially started with when it first aired, and then it kind of cut, and then it was kind of teased like, hey, we're gonna get back to this scene. So episode 8, for the first time in damn near 2 seasons, it gave us the continuation of that scene, if that makes sense. But other than that, a ton of shit went down this episode. I'm going to stop wasting time and get right to it. First off, though, my name is Chenny Britt. I'm one half of Winter Hill Warriors, and I've been covering Tokyo Vice this season. Also covering House of the Dragon right now with my boy Damon, who also runs this channel, and we've been covering Shogun. So that's just a quick intro, but let's get into it. Let's start breaking down what goes down in this episode because it's pretty crazy. Switch to the views. All right. If my audio or anything is off at any moment, just let me know in the chat. But let's get going. All right. So the episode opens up with Yakuza arrests in Hawaii, which is pretty interesting. The woman that's serving the drink to these Yakuza members ends up being an undercover FBI agent. And the Yakuza family is called the Miura family. So they were doing business in the U.S., and all of their members are kind of just chilling at this resort, being intimidating, and they get arrested. All right, then we cut to Jake, and Jake's returned to Tokyo now. He kind of blew off, not even kind of blew off, he blew off his sister, blew off his family, went back to Tokyo because Katagiri really needed him. And Katagiri and Nagata pull up to Jake's apartment in Tokyo, and he fills them in on more details about what he found in Minnesota, talking to Tozawa. Now, basically, like, Tozawa must have entered the U.S. with a forged passport because he was on like a no-fly list, right? So he wasn't really allowed to leave Japan, yet he somehow got in the U.S. So some crime occurred there, and that matters because. And I should also say that would be a crime both in Japan and in the U.S. And the reason why that matters, like those kind of subtleties matter, is because they're trying to put Tozawa's ass away in jail for a long time. And the more crimes that you can prove that he committed, especially crimes in multiple countries, the better case you're gonna have, right? So that's why that stuff matters. Now, Jake also cites potential crimes such as manslaughter and additional immigration violations. Why manslaughter? Well, most people wait years in the transplant line, right? So we got that from last episode when Jake was talking to the surgeon. So Tozawa jumping that line means that someone else wasn't able to get a liver transplant and probably died. Superintendent Nagata wonders if the U.S. would want him extradited. And according to Katagiri, all Yakuza members fear American prisons. Honestly, like, if you think about it, there's not that many Japanese in American prison. So once you get into prison, like, a lot of prison culture is about banding with people who look like you. So if you're black, you're hanging out with the black people in prison. If you're white, you're hanging out with white people in prison. Latinos in prison. That's kind of how prison culture goes. So if you're a Japanese Yakuza member, there's not that many Japanese in prison. You're going to have very few people to protect you if you go to jail. So you're screwed. Anyways, Jake wants to know why they can't just press charges in Japan, since now Nagata and Katagiri know about what Tozawa was doing. And Katagiri's basically saying, look, there's a mole in the department, right? Remember last episode, one of the shooters that they were going to transport to the courthouse, and he was going to basically be a witness against Tozawa. He got shot up, right, on the way to the courthouse. So clearly there's a mole in the department. In the previous episode breakdown that I did, I mentioned that Nagata must have been the mole. I was fucking wrong. We'll talk about that later on. But anyways, Katagiri basically says, look, Jake, the way you can help us is by publishing a story which would, I guess, get them warrants to search for Tozawa. I don't really know much about legal stuff and this type of shit, so it seemed a little bit like a stretch, but I guess Jake has to write a story. That's what they want him to do. So Jake agrees, and then Nagata says, look, where you can start is the FBI office in the U.S., aka the American Embassy. Sorry, I misspoke. You can start by talking to the FBI, and there's an American Embassy in Tokyo, so you can go there and talk to the agents there to try to get more info on just all of this stuff. That was a lot. We then cut to Samantha and Sato. They're back dating. They're together again. And Sam asks for a gun. And we know why she wants a gun. She wants to go after Akira, who stole all of her money in season 1. And, she wants to basically go bully him and get money from him. Sato obviously isn't going to willingly just give her a gun. So he does ask Samantha, like, why do you need a gun? And she lies and ends up saying, it's for protection, because Tozawa knows my name. And since he knows my name and everything, he might send goons to come kill me, so I need a gun. Now, that's enough for Sato. Since he's not Yakuza right now, he doesn't need the gun, technically. So he gives her the gun, and they talk a little bit more, and Samantha finds out, because she's obviously curious, like, wait, why don't you need the gun? Why are you giving me your gun? Sato's like, look, I'm no longer part of Chiharu-kai. I challenged Hayama. I got kicked out. My younger brother Kaito is still there. I have no backup plan. Like, with all of those tattoos, I mean, there's what other job is going to really hire him in Japan? Because everybody in Japan knows what all those tattoos mean, right? So he's not exactly going to be able to get a corporate job with those tattoos. Sam, meanwhile, is also borderline broke at this point. Her cash reserves are low. She has like one small bundle of cash left. But these two are riding with each other. They got each other's backs. I see a lot of hate for Sam in the subreddit, and I get it. She can be pretty annoying. But at the same time, like, I gotta respect, her balls. She's got a lot of gumption. Meanwhile, we cut to Emmy, who is Jake's supervisor at the Meicho. And last episode, Emmy tried to invite her, the man that she's seeing, Shingo, over for dinner, and her younger brother hated him. And her younger brother, I think his name is, it's either Ki or K or Kai. I'm just going to say Ki. He seems afraid that Emmy is going to leave him because that's kind of what their parents did. And it's because, Ki has mental health issues. We don't know specifically what he suffers from, but seems like it's bipolar. But Emmy just seems kind of fed up with all this, right? Like, she's given her life for him. And even though he has mental health issues and isn't purposefully trying to be difficult, it's unfair to Emmy to live this way, right? Like, she has a right to live her life to the fullest as well. And the guy that she's seeing, Shingo, genuinely seems like a good guy. And the fact that she has a younger brother who's mentally unstable and is a big part of her life doesn't bother Shingo. And look, life is unfair. At some point, Emmy has to be unafraid to live her truth. Mental health discussions haven't always been huge in Asian countries specifically. So basically, Emmy's just like, I'm fucking done with this shit. I'm going to work. And Ki is basically trying to say, like, look, I could take care of you. But it's pretty obvious. He's just afraid of her finding someone else, because then who is he going to have? Which is a fair concern from his part. But he is kind of just ruining her life right now, no lie. But Emmy goes back to the Meicho, and Jake returns, which is a surprise, first of all. And I'll touch a little bit more on that. But first, Emmy, when she pulls back up to the Meicho, she gives the Hawaii Yakuza arrest story to Shinohara. And then she checks in on Tintin, and he tells her he does have some updates. Now, remember, he's secretly investigating Baku to see if he's corrupt, right, for Emmy. And they're supposed to keep that between just them. So then out of nowhere, Jake pulls back up. He was supposed to be on leave for 4 more days because, he almost fought Tintin, right? So that act of aggression probably got him put on like a forced vacation, not like a mandatory suspension, but basically they were just like, yo, get out of here. You're losing your mind right now. But he comes back and he apologizes to Emmy. And at the same time, he brings some peace offerings for everyone else. So he brings Tintin some quality maple syrup from Minnesota for baking. And he gives Shinohara a Kirby Puckett jersey. I don't know who that is, but it's probably just a pretty solid baseball player. I don't follow the MLB, but he also then has the Tozawa scoop for Emmy. But she first tells him, hey, I don't want to hear it yet. help Shinohara first with this Hawaii Yakuza bust, assist him with writing this story. And there's this funny scene where Shinohara tells Jake, hey, you know, most people in the office wanted to see your plane crash. I'm actually one of the few who didn't. And he's kind of joking, like they have that sort of relationship. I really like Shinohara. He seems like the man. But it goes to show that Jake really pissed a lot of people off with this outburst. And look, he's a gaijin, right? Like he's an outsider. He's a white guy in a top Japanese paper. So there's always going to be just some inherent animosity there. All right. Meanwhile, we see Tozawa talking to his number 2. Side note, Yabuki is a badass motherfucker, dude. Look at just the shades on his face. Like he looks like a scary Yakuza boss. But anyways, Yabuki wonders what Tozawa is up to, right? So Tozawa obviously shares a lot of things with his number 2, but he's not going to share everything. He's got some shit that only really he knows about, right? So there's a lot of violence right now between the gangs in Japan, and there's, you know, that's bringing a lot of police attention to them. And Yabuki is worried about that because he's like, look, more police attention means that we could get arrested. And Tozawa seems unfazed by that. He's not worried about the police attention at all. In fact, he seems excited about it. And he says that the other families will be forced to stop activities or just be shut down. Now, it's pretty clear that Tozawa has some sort of deal with the cops, right? Like either he's snitching and giving them information or something where he's untouchable and all the other families are getting fucked over. So Yabuki's been in the dark about all of this, but he soon realizes that like his boss, Tozawa, must be in some sort of cahoots with the authorities. At this same time, Misaki is coming up to go see Tozawa, and it's another one of Tozawa's goons. His name is Hagino, and he's the one who initially caught Misaki running off to go bang Jake, right? Which was really foolish. So she gets caught, and now, like, if Tozawa finds out, then he's probably gonna kill her, right? And remember, in the previous episode, Hagino had Misaki sign some papers on behalf of Tozawa, and if she refused, then Hagino said, hey, I'm gonna tell Tozawa what I saw. So he now escorts her to go meet Tozawa, and it's pretty terrifying because you're like, does Tozawa know? Did he find out about this shit? And you know, if he does, then it's really gonna be bad for her, right? But it actually turns out that Hagino didn't snitch on Misaki yet, since Tozawa knows nothing about what she's done with Jake. So he actually tells her, hey, you know, I really value loyalty. You've been super loyal to me. And he gifts her a deed to a house for her mom. So the papers that she signed in last episode were actually just ownership papers. So now her mom has a house in her name. So I guess Misaki gets rewarded. It is obviously going to be very emotional for Misaki because she legitimately, in a 5-minute span, went from thinking that she might get killed, like she might get a bullet in her head, to now realizing that her mom has a house. So on the way down the elevator, Misaki thanks Hagino for not telling on her, basically. But Hagino's like, look, there's one more appointment. Hagino's also a cool-ass motherfucker. He never says anything more than he should, right? Like, in the life of crime, never say more than you have to. All right, back to Katagiri. I didn't know that, you know, detective forces, police forces had this type of shit, but this is pretty cool. They have like a reenactment center, which is basically where they can reenact any sort of crime and then try to, you know, gain some insights for it, right? So Katagiri is trying to reenact the shooting of their witness and trying to simulate everything that happened. He's really just trying to find if he's missing something, right? Like he knows somebody is a mole in the station, but he needs to piece together a few more things to really come up with a conclusion. So as they're kind of doing their simulation run through, and he's sitting exactly where he sat when the shooting originally happened. As they're doing that run through, he ends up having an epiphany, right? So Katagiri realizes that the officer that was sitting next to the witness was the mole, since the motorcycle pulled up on the left side of the car and started firing shots in the second row of seats. Now, if this officer didn't know that the shots were coming, he would have got shot in the head, right? But Katagiri realizes like that he ducked right before the motorcycle pulled up, and because of that, he knew, and he was able to keep himself safe, and they basically fired right over his head and killed the witness. Now, Nagata was actually sitting next to Katagiri in the front seat, so there's no way that she was the mole. In my last video, I had said it was obvious that the mole was Nagata. Well, I'm a fucking idiot, and I was wrong. So Nagata is actually innocent. My bad. But that's Katagiri's realization. So whoever this dude is, that we see sitting in the back seat, he's the one that is the mole. And speaking of Nagata, she gets called into the assistant commissioner's office. This is, I think his name is Ide. It was really hard to find out his name, but he's like, basically head of that office, right? And Nagata gets the word from Katagiri. So Katagiri's like, hey, look, whoever the fuck that officer was with us in the car, that officer is the mole. So Nagata comes in. She's like, hey, let's go have internal affairs investigate this stuff. But as she walks in, Ide's like, nah, you're getting reassigned. We don't know yet if Ide is in on all of this shit or if he's just someone who follows orders from above and doesn't ask any questions. We still don't know that yet. But Nagata is now out of the picture. Let me take a sip of water real quick. Okay, let's keep going. So Masaki goes to her one last appointment, and we see it's actually Kazuko, who's technically Tozawa's wife, but I doubt that they're having any sort of relations. But she meets with Kazuko, and Kazuko, like what we know about Kazuko is that she comes from a very powerful and connected family, and she's basically been running things from behind the scenes, and there's a lot of tension between her and Tozawa. Now, Kazuko tells Masaki that like she knows everything. She knows that Masaki has been banging Tozawa, blah, blah, blah. She doesn't care about that. She says that men are weak and that every great man has their business managed for them, and that's Kazuko's role. So she doesn't care about Tozawa's cheating. She just needs to know what Tozawa has told Masaki, right? Because Tozawa is a man who keeps things from everyone, right? So there are certain things that Kazuko doesn't know about, and she wants to because it seems like she's trying to figure out a way to get Tozawa out of the picture to protect her family. She clearly thinks that the way that Tozawa has been moving right now is just not good for business, and it's going to ultimately like fuck them all over. So she's just needs to get a clearer picture of all of the things that Tozawa might have let slip to Masaki, pillow talk type of shit, just so she can fully understand what Tozawa's plans are. And another thing that is important about this scene is that we now know that Hagino is actually loyal to Kazuko. He's not loyal to Tozawa. But Kazuko basically tells Masaki, look, tell me everything that Tozawa has told you. If you lie to me, I'm going to have Hagino tell Tozawa that he caught you going to Jake's house. He's going to kill you, right? If you tell me the truth, then none of this ever gets said. Your mom gets the house, right? And you can continue to live, basically. Easy deal for Masaki to accept. No brainer. Okay, back to Sam's revenge quest, right? She uses the last of her cash bundle to pay off the club owner. I think the club owner's name is Inaba, that older lady right there. So Akira used to work as a host at that club, and when he left, we know Akira's a scumbag, so he definitely left with, owing her some money, right? Sam needs to know where Akira is, so she basically just gives up the money and asks Inaba, look, give me, give up his info. And Inaba has no problem with it. She fucking hates Akira too, so she actually tells Sam, like, when you find him, beat the fuck out of him, basically. That's basically what she tells Sam. Okay, all right, let's get back to the FBI story on the Yakuza. So now Jake and Shinohara meet with Jason Aoki, the American dude who works for, the Japanese American who works for the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo. They grill him on the recent Yakuza arrests in Hawaii, and Jason says, like, they were surprised by how extensively the Yakuza were operating in the U.S., and he lets it slip that more arrests are coming. Now, Shinohara wants to know if the Yakuza arrest came from Japanese internal intel and law enforcement or somewhere else, but Aoki says he doesn't know much about that. They should talk to Lin, who's his superior, and it's an American, or maybe it's not his superior, but it's someone who's much higher up, and she's an American FBI agent working in Japan at the U.S. Embassy. So he's like, go talk to Lin. So as he walks off, Shinohara tells Jake, hey, you go talk to Lin. And Jake's like, or I think Jake suggests that he talks to Lin because she's American. It's going to be a lot easier for Jake to communicate with her. So Jake is going to go talk to Lynn Oberfeld, and Jake also then inquires about Shino and Jason's relationship, because we know in one of the previous episodes they became lovers, and Shino's basically like, yo, relax, bro, like let's not talk about that, just don't ask, don't tell, which is pretty funny. Meanwhile, back at the Meicho, Tintin reports to Emi on his findings on Baku, and there's some interesting stuff there. Before he joined the Meicho, Baku lived in Kansai, which is where Tozawa came up from. Now, 10 years ago, Baku wrote an editorial in the Osaka Times about treating all citizens equally under the law, including Yakuza. So he interviewed Tozawa for the piece, so now it's clear that these guys knew each other from way back. All right, this scene is super, super important. It's the meeting that happens between Kazuko, Tozawa's wife, Tozawa himself, and the current Minister of Transport, Shigematsu. Now, quick refresher, Shigematsu was the one who was in the Paulina death video. Like, he basically caused her death, and it's on tape, so he's guilty as fuck. Now, he is definitely in cahoots with Tozawa, but he blocked Tozawa from getting a passport to the U.S. Like, he couldn't go that far. So it seems like Kazuko is plotting with Shigematsu to have him become the next Minister of Finance, right? That's what they're meeting about, which would benefit, obviously, all of Kazuko's family's businesses. Tozawa pulls up out of nowhere, though, and then just kind of blows these plans up. So, as I mentioned earlier, Shigematsu didn't approve Tozawa leaving Japan, so Tozawa's still mad at him for that. Now, it's not that Shigematsu didn't want to approve Tozawa's leave. It's that if he did, it would have been so obvious that he's in with Tozawa that it was just too loud of a move to make. So it was just too much. He couldn't make that move. Tozawa was like, all right, I'm over that, but I want you to now become the Minister of Justice for obvious reasons, right? Like, if you're coming from the life of crime and you have the Minister of Justice in your pocket, then you can put all of your enemies behind bars and you can be a free man. Now, Shige's like, look, why don't we focus on finance first? And Tozawa is just like, hey, do you remember the videotape that we have of you? Yeah, shut the fuck up and do as I say. Now, here's the thing. Tozawa also lets it slip that basically Shigematsu has risen very quickly recently, and a lot of it is due to Tozawa's influence, the money that he's donated, stuff like that. And obviously Shige's like, no, I'm a self-made man. I rose by my own merits. And that's when Tozawa's like, your own merits? What if I just drop this tape? What if I drop the tape of you being complicit in Paulina's murder? You're done, right? So there's nothing Shige can do. He's got to be like, okay, Tozawa, I'll do anything you say. I'll be the justice minister. So we see like Tozawa isn't bribing his way now to control Shige. He's just straight up using blackmail. Because Shige at this point, like as Minister of Transport, like he's a rich dude, right? Like he's very powerful. So the only way Tozawa can really get away with controlling Shige, and it's not through violence either, because killing the Minister of Transport would also be a really like obvious move. It would bring a lot of heat on Tozawa. The only real way to control someone at Shige's level is through blackmail. Shige leaves, and then Kazuko's like, just goes in on Tozawa. She's basically like, you're a fucking child. You're an idiot. You have no idea what you're doing. You're thinking on such a low level. You think that controlling the Minister of Justice is going to be better for you. Like, you don't actually understand how things work, right? The way that things work is that controlling the markets, controlling the money, that equals ultimate power. The money is the power. So she then leaves and calls him a Kansai street thug, and he's only protected because he's affiliated with her and her family has immense resources. So she's the only one so far in the show that gets to talk to Tozawa like this. Like, she talks down to him all the fucking time. It's kind of crazy. But clearly Tozawa doesn't like that. So I wonder if he's going to plot something to get back at her at some point. But Kazuko is clearly a fucking menace herself. And these two are married in name only. They fucking hate each other. So Jake then goes to the American embassy and talks to Lynn Oberfeld. And he first goes, like, he does two things, right? Like, his meeting is about, A, just getting some baseline information to help Shinohara with his Hawaii story, right? Just understanding, hey, what were these, Yakuza members charged with? How many did you get? Blah, blah, blah. Stuff like that that's going to help Shino write the story. So that conversation goes pretty easily. But there are some things that have to be off the record that Lynn can't talk about, right? So she tells Jake, like, hey, look, the FBI did act alone. And when I say alone, I'm using if you're in the chat, I'm using quotation marks when I say alone, because they definitely had help, but the help that they got wasn't from any Tokyo authorities. So it begs the question, who helped the FBI, right? Maybe it was Tozawa. I think that's the prevailing theory right now. So Jake then starts asking some hypotheticals, mainly about Tozawa. He's like, what if, like, could you extradite someone who kind of illegally got into Japan and then jumped the line for a transplant? So at some point, like, Lin's like, dude, that sounds like a very specific example. Like, just tell me what's up. And Jake just throws his entire Tozawa theory at Lin. And he basically says, look, like, I think Tozawa illegally got into the U.S., jumped the transplant line, bribed a doctor, blah, 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 and whatever. So he committed a major crime. And Lin says, okay, fine, just tell me what you got. I'll talk to DC and we'll see what we can find. Now we're back to Sato. Now, I love this arc from Gen. I think I called him Gem, Gem, in the last episode. Once again, if you're listening to me, you're wrong because I'm a fucking idiot. But his name is actually Gen, Gen. Anyways, Gen secretly meets with Sato, right, and delivers the official banishment letter that Hayama had written. And it basically just says, like, no one can interact with Sato. It's an insult to the Chiharu-kai if you interact with Sato. So what Gen's doing right now as a current Chiharu-kai member is very risky, but we now see that his loyalty is seriously to Sato, which is an awesome arc from Gen. So he also tells Sato about the recent shooting of some of Tozawa's goons. And he says that, hey, look, the shooting was really stupid. It was done in, public. At the same time, Kaito, your younger brother, was involved in the shooting. Now that pisses Sato off. And Gen says, look, no one in the Chiharu-kai have the balls to really stop Hayama, but it's clear that he is not fit to be the leader. So that's where the meeting ends off at. Meanwhile, remember we talked earlier about Nagata getting replaced. That announcement is made public to everyone at the local force. And this is the first time that Katagiri hears about it. So he's like, dude, what the hell? So the assistant commissioner, announces that Nagata is now replaced with Yamada. Everyone is shocked. So you see some of the officers or some of the people at the station being like, wait, Nagata was good. She got results. Why are we replacing her? But basically the commissioner is like, look, you guys do as you're told. I'm not the one who makes these reassignment decisions. I just get the directive from up top. Just shut the hell up. So Katagiri's mad. He goes in to have a private conversation, and he basically tells Katagiri the same thing, like, shut up before I reassign you. So we still don't know if the assistant commissioner is in on all of this, or if he's just somebody who is like, hey, I'll do as I'm told, no questions asked. We still don't know that yet. Meanwhile, Lynn Oberfeld, who Jake met with earlier, she calls Jake back and clearly just lies to him. But basically she says, look, I talked to everyone from DC and, real quick thing I got to mention is Tozawa used a fake name to get the transplant. So the name that he used was Spencer Tanaka, which is such a funny name. But Lynn tells Jake, yeah, we talked to DC. We talked to all the, different FBI offices back in the U.S. And Spencer Tanaka, that's a real person. He's an American citizen. He's a 61-year-old, recently retired high school English teacher, and he's living in Georgia. Jake knows this is bullshit because Jake already had the surgeon tell him who he performed on. The surgeon didn't know who Tozawa was, but he knew it was like a dude who was covered in tattoos and didn't speak English. So that obviously was not this made-up Spencer Tanaka that Lynn's talking about. So Jake knows this, but Jake now knows that Lynn is in on this, so he's not going to then accuse her of anything. So he just goes, hey, Lynn, you're right. Thanks. Thanks for stopping me from writing a really bad story. Really, thank you. Thanks for the help. So he basically he doesn't want Lynn to know that he's on to her, which is smart. Jake is a smart kid. And then he immediately talks to Emi, and he tells Emi about what, this whole Tozawa thing. So he hasn't had a chance yet to report to Emi about the Tozawa transplant situation, but he now tells her everything, everything about Tozawa, the Minnesota hospital, the surgeon who was wearing the same $250,000 Constantine watch that Tozawa had in season 1. He also tells Emi about Lynn lying to him, which is obvious because, Jake talked to the surgeon. So he believes Tozawa most likely bribed Lynn. Did he bribe her with cash individually, or is he working with the FBI, right? Like maybe he bribed her with information about the Yakuza. So Emi tells Jake, look, go chase this story, but we can't trust anyone, so don't tell anybody else about this. Taking another water break real quick. Okay. Meanwhile, back to Sam. So she grabs the gun that she has from Sato and she also hits up Erica. I will say, Sam can be pretty fucking annoying because she uses Erica. So she calls Erica and has her like come with her to go to Akira's apartment. And basically what they do is they send in Erica first because Akira hasn't seen her and she knocks on his door. Is like, I'm your biggest fan. I really want to see you. That's super creepy, right? Like, how do you know where I live? But Akira opens it enough because Erica is obviously very beautiful. And then that just allows Sam to kind of storm in. So they storm in. Akira ends up getting pistol whipped, and Sam's asking him for money. Where's the fucking money you stole from me? Blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that Akira is fugazi, right? He's a fraud. His clothes and jewelry are mainly borrowed. People just give him stuff to wear, and then he has to give it right back. So he's a bitch. He's a slave, right? He doesn't have shit. So Sam starts looking around the apartment, and she realizes, like, this dude's not lying. He really doesn't have anything, right? So she just starts kicking the shit out of him when he's on the ground. And, like, she probably would have killed him. But Erica, once again, is just like, Sam, let's get the fuck out of here. So Erica gets Sam out of there before she commits murder. Meanwhile, back at the Meicho, Jake gets the call from Yabuki, and he basically says, look, we need to talk. And Jake's like, what if I don't want to talk? And Yabuki's like, we're just going to kill you and kill your family, kill everyone you know. So there's nothing Jake can do. He's obviously got to talk. All right, now we're going to move on to the most exciting scene. It's the scene when, you know, the Chiharu-kai shower scene. This is the best scene in the entire episode. I had some requests from, I forget who it was, but someone commented and requested for me to break this scene down a little bit more in detail. So I did a lot on this, but I call this Chiharu-kai shower time. So all the members of the Chiharu-kai are doing a group shower, which is, I guess, like what the Yakuza did. And Hayama is bullying Kaito, like, to go scrub his back, which is just so fucking absurd. But Sato pulls up and he says he's there to take Kaito home, right? And Hayama is pissed and he tells Sato, get the fuck out before somebody breaks your face. And Sato refuses, and then Hayama tells the rest of the Chiharu-kai soldiers, handle Sato. Now, it's looking pretty bad for Sato. Like, all of the Chiharu-kai members are looking mean. They're butt-ass naked. They're tatted. They're standing up. It's looking like Sato's about to get gutted like a fish. But out of nowhere, Kaito spills the beans and says, you know, Hayama killed one of our own. And remember, this was earlier in the season when Hayama lost his cool and killed a former Chiharu-kai member and a Chiharu-kai associate, Ota, right? Like, they got too hammered. They were supposed to get guns from him, and Hayama ended up stabbing him to death. Sato confirms this, and now the other members in the family are like, wait a second, what did he say? Like, you know, is what he's saying true? Because if it's true, they can't follow Hayama. And Hayama is already not liked throughout the family, but if it's confirmed that he killed one of their members or one of their former members, then it's over for him. So Hayama just starts fighting Sato once he realizes, like, he first commands the rest of the Chiharu-kai members to go murder Sato, but at this point, they're kind of at a standstill because the rest of the members are like, wait, we don't know who to follow. You know, Hayama is technically in charge, but we like Sato more. We think Sato is more fit to be a leader. Hayama's clearly a piece of shit, and now he might have just killed, you know, one of our own members, right, or former members. So, like, they're kind of just stuck. They don't really know what to do. So Hayama just takes matters into his own hands and just starts fighting Sato while his dong is out. And I gotta give Hayama credit. The previous episode, I said incorrectly, like, yo, Sato would clearly beat up Hayama. I was so fucking wrong about that. Hayama's kicking the shit out of Sato. He's winning the fight through pure rage. Sato does end up getting in this, like, nice eye gouge on Hayama, but Hayama still gets Sato to the ground, and he's just smashing, or at least trying to smash his face in with the bucket. But out of nowhere, like it's WWE, Jen comes in and just boots Hayama in the head, gets him off, and that gives Sato enough time to start beating the shit out of Hayama. He basically beats him to the point of being nearly unconscious, and then just, like, you know that Sato was thinking about this for so long because no hesitation, zero looking down at Hayama being like, what have I done? What have I done? Nope. He just grabs Hayama, immediately proceeds to drown him in the tub. Just drown him in the tub. And in the middle of doing that, the rest of the Chiharu-kai members all come in and they do a group drowning. They all drown Hayama together. So it just goes to show how much they really hated Hayama's ass. But now Hayama is dead, and we got to assume that Sato is going to be the leader of the Chiharu-kai. All right, back to the meeting between Jake and Yabuki, and Katagiri goes with Jake. Like I mentioned before, this is the scene that opened up this entire show. The first thing we see in season 1, episode 1. Now, I gotta say a few things, right? Anyone who's watched that scene and watched this scene, like, it's clear that when they kind of filmed this, they didn't really pay a lot of attention to detail because there's a lot of little differences between this scene and the scene that started season 1. And I think I gotta give the showrunners a break because, look, I think when they made this show, they had no idea if season 2 was gonna get greenlit. So they made that show just thinking like, okay, maybe it'll just be a season. We'll see how well it does. So I don't think they were planning that far ahead. And, we just gotta cut them a break because I just like this show so much. But anyways, they meet with Yabuki and he's basically just like, look, we're gonna fucking kill you and kill your family if you publish the story. And the bigger news is that they somehow caught wind of this story. So clearly Lin or someone in the FBI's office reported and snitched to Tozawa about Jake having this story, right? So Tozawa's caught wind of it. Yabuki basically threatens Jake and says, if you stop now, nothing will happen to you. But if you publish this story, we're going to murder you and kill your family. And Jake has no choice but to agree. And like, that's the right choice. Like, if you were in Jake's position, what would you do? Like, you're not going to say no. But after Jake agrees and Yabuki seems satisfied, he does threaten Katagiri. And remember, like earlier in the season, some of Tozawa's men put photographs of Katagiri's children and his family on Katagiri's car. So the implicit threat was like, we know where your family is. We'll kill your daughters. We'll kill your wife if you keep trying to investigate us. So Katagiri had to back off from the investigation, but he was still secretly investigating them, right? Now that he's on this meeting with Jake, Yabuki's basically like, what happened to the agreement that we had? And he suggests that, hey, maybe Tozawa is going to change his mind about that agreement. And he basically just threatens to kill Katagiri's family. So that's pretty terrifying for Katagiri. And then as Katagiri and Jake are taking the elevator down, Jake's like, well, what do I do now? I can't write this story, right? And Katagiri's like, nah, keep writing the story, which was a crazy response. He says that, look, them calling for this meeting means that they're really spooked and that you're close. So Jake has to continue to write the story. It's obviously really high stakes because if Jake slips up or if they don't get this done quick enough, then, he could die, right? If Tozawa's men catch wind of him doing this. So Katagiri's just on his like give zero fucks mode. He senses that the end is near and he's down to do whatever he can to push it over the finish line, even if it means risking everyone's life, including his own. Meanwhile, with Hayama now butchered or drowned, Sato brings Kaito home, which is a nice scene. Sato's mom seems pretty happy and actually proud of Sato for doing what he said he was going to do. She even invites him in for tea, which is a huge moment because we know Sato's estranged from his parents. But Sato says, look, I got to be careful now because anyone who I'm affiliated with is going to be in danger. He basically says he's the leader of the Chiharu-kai now. He's got responsibility. He's got people that, look up to him and he's got to take care of. So he basically says, look, like, best of luck to both of you. I always care about both of you. But right now, like, you can't be near me because it's just too dangerous. And he walks off to go fulfill his duties, I'm guessing, as the next Oyabun. Dope scene. Meanwhile, Katagiri, remember the threat that Yabuki basically dropped earlier? Katagiri goes and moves his family into a hotel. His wife is obviously pissed because she's like, dude, I told you to stop with this shit. Like you're putting me and your daughters in danger. You're being selfish. But she does tell him, look, it's your fault, but go and finish this thing. Finish it. So that was kind of cool that her wife knows, like, look, you just got to finish it. Put this man in jail. At this point, putting Tozawa and his entire organization behind bars is the only way for Katagiri's family to be safe. Jake also is like pretty terrified about this whole situation, so he calls his dad. Once again, we spend all of season 1 and a big part of season 2 being like, man, does Jake's family suck? Jake seems to really like be annoyed by his family. And then we actually saw his family, and his family seemed lovely, to be totally honest. So Jake's dad is the fucking man, and Jake calls his dad, and his dad's not mad at him. I guess Jake's sister is okay from Jake just completely like dipping on her and ghosting his responsibilities that he said he was going to fulfill for her. And Jake's dad is kind of like loving and cool to his son. So Jake tells his dad everything. He goes, look, I'm writing a story on a very dangerous man in Japan, and he's now threatened to kill me and my entire family. Now, Jake's dad takes this in stride. Instead of being like, holy fucking shit, that's terrifying. What are you talking about? His dad's like, damn, you should keep going. The only way is through. So his dad tells him to keep going, even though it's going to put their entire family in danger. Pretty wild. I respect it, but pretty fucking wild. And then the episode ends with what I call a little montage showing Tozawa becoming unstoppable. Basically, we see breaking news that says that the current prime minister of Japan is all of a sudden resigning out of nowhere due to health concerns, which is odd because even the news broadcaster is like, we never heard about these health concerns before. So I don't know, these health concerns, these random health concerns came up out of nowhere, and now the current prime minister has announced that he plans to resign, which is pretty fucking sketchy, right? And we see, like, while this is breaking, everyone's watching this, right? So Jake's at a bar watching this. Tozawa's watching this, really pumped, and Emmy and the rest of the employees at the Meicho are all watching this as well. But then we get another bomb dropped on us. The successor to the prime minister there's already kind of been a consensus on the successor, and the successor is Shigematsu. So we went from Shigematsu being a corrupt, evil minister of transport to then potentially becoming minister of finance, then Tozawa coming in and being like, nope, you got to be minister of justice, and now he's jumping to prime minister. Now, maybe correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. If you're on the replay and you have better insight on this, comment, please. I love hearing about people who know more about this show than me. But this is like, if he becomes prime minister, then Tozawa is unstoppable because Shigematsu, like, would he be in Tozawa's pocket, right? And he'd basically be running Japan. So this is very bad for everyone opposed to Tozawa if Shigematsu becomes the prime minister, and everyone's just looking on in horror. And we actually see a scene that I didn't include in this video, but it's a scene where Kazuko and Tozawa are both watching the TV, and Tozawa has this like massive smile on his face, and Kazuko just looks like so pissed off. And yeah, that's basically the conclusion of the episode. So we got 2 episodes left in this season. They're gonna wrap this up. I think this will be just a 2-season show, which is good. Like, I love the show so much. I wish there was more seasons, but I do think wrapping this up in 2 seasons is a better arc. So in the next 2 episodes, basically Katagiri and Jake have to find a way not only to stay alive, but to somehow expose Tozawa. And it's going to be difficult because if the FBI is actually in on this, right, then there's going to be major hurdles in their way. It's not going to just be Tozawa trying to stop them. It's going to be, the U.S. trying to stop them. Now, we have to know in the next 2 episodes, did Lynn Oberfeld act on her own accord? Like, did she get bribed by Tozawa and she was a rogue actor? Or is this one of those situations where the FBI is working with Tozawa as a whole and they're like, fine, we're not going to get rid of the Yakuza entirely. We just want no Yakuza presence in the U.S. We only care about what's going on in our borders when it comes to this shit. So we're just going to pick one of the Yakuza and just have him elevate to power, get rid of all the rest, and you just give us information on what's going on our shores, and we'll let you come in the country. Like is it some sort of deal? Did Tozawa snitch on the whole, on the Miura family and a bunch of other Yakuza families to basically allow himself to get to the U.S. and get that liver transplant? Was that the deal that was made? That's what we got to find out. And then we got to find out how Katagiri and Jake plan on writing the story and getting all of this out and having it done without their families getting just absolutely butchered. So that's going to be fucking crazy. And then meanwhile for Sato, he's now probably taking over as the Oyuban for the Chiharu-kai, but there's a war in the streets, right? So he's got to find a way to protect his men because they just tried to take out a bunch of Tozawa's men. I think one of the guys died, but the other guy survived. That's an act of war. Tozawa has more of the other families aligned with him, whether it's mostly through fear, right? It's mostly through fear and desperation. Like, he controls the money now, so all of the other families are aligned with him. So it's basically going to be like a Chiharu-kai versus all type of war, and the odds are stacked against them. So both Jake and Sato are fighting fucking uphill battles, but man, it's going to be fucking amazing to watch. 2 more episodes left. I'll be breaking down episode 9 later this week. Apologize for being late to the stream. I had a really busy week. Just couldn't get to it on Friday, but I'm going to be trying to get to it this Friday. And yeah, I'll be back with 9 and 10. Appreciate everyone who dropped in to watch. Appreciate everyone who comments. Appreciate all of that. It's always cool just to know that people like watching this stuff. And great show. I will catch y'all later.